Well, it's middle of February and it's 10 degrees out. So this is a great time for us to get working on some summer projects or fall projects that didn't happen. And today we're going to be building some more rabbit hutches.
All right, so basically through numerous videos over the years, you've seen our hutches, you've seen the design. These are year-round hutches. The rabbits stay outside in these all year, enclosed on 3 sides. And basically, since we have them already made, all I'm going to do is go and measure one, and then we will be able to cut everything down to size. We're going to be making 2 different designs, our Mega Hutch, as we call it, and our regular size hutch. Now, we're going to pretty much work through these simultaneously. But if you're interested in building for yourself one or the other, we're going to put a list down below, a supply list with dimensions and everything you need to build each one individually, so you can check it out and make your own tweaks and your own decisions on that. But at least we'll give you the list down below, and that will make it a little easier for a start, right?
Even behind the clouds, today's sun's pretty warm for February. And of course, Silky's being Silky's in our work zone. We're going to have to move them here in a moment so we can work on that table. So one thing we are trying to do with this project is use up scraps. We have quite a few scrap pieces of lumber laying around the yard. Some of them we can't find because they're still under snow, but so far we're not doing too bad. Well, we kind of just skipped over it because really the cutting's kind of boring and takes a bit of time. But so we have the smaller hutch, all the 2x4s required for it, cut up. So now we're into the assembly part, but the first thing we have to do is cut the wire that we used for the front, because we kept just enough wire basically to make sure we could build these two hutches. So there's our wire. Now we have been using for the front of these hutches 1x1 square mesh. So it's a little bigger than maybe we should be using. It's worked okay for these though. We haven't had any issues because frankly, the hutches are up off the ground. The nice part is we already had hutches to sort of back calculate this from, but we've gone over 54 inches because these are 1-inch squares. And I'm cutting down the edge, and this will become our front wire panel, the only side of the hutch that is completely open. And these are just handy dandy fencing pliers. Make pretty short work of this. And we'll basically have a second piece left over for our larger hutch.
So we got our bottom together, and then what happened?
The drill died, both batteries, so
yeah.
Hopefully the batteries are not toast and they'll take a charge. It's an old drill, but it's been great. But at the same time, when technology doesn't work, it sucks. So
Yeah.
we'll go and charge them and see if that makes a difference. Hopefully the batteries hold charge.
Look at it, guys. Look, it's sunny and I'm only in a sweater. It has been over a month since we started this video. We got stuck in some really junky cold weather. And as you know, we have exponential rabbit creep going on here. I mean, people talk about chickens being bad. Rabbits are just as bad. And we need to get these hutches done in order to move some rabbits out of the barn, because the barn has some work that needs to be done too. So finally, we're back at it. We're going to finish building this first regular sized hutch, and then we're going to hopefully get our Mega Hutch done as well. So we left off with all of our pieces cut for our first hutch, and that's where we are starting up again. We brought them all out of the barn and got them reorganized. So we're going to start kind of assembling. All right, so far we have assembled our bottom with our bottom sides and center. And now we've toe-nailed a U shape here. This is our top front and 2 legs. The bottom board is only in there just to keep it square, because we're now going to tack on the wire. This is probably the most difficult part, I think, of...
The least fun part.
Yeah, the least fun part of this rabbit hutch design.
So a little trick for getting the wire pretty tight. So once you've gone around the other sides, you're going to take your... This works for any kind of wire. You're going to take your staple, you're going to come down to here, and you put it on an angle in the direction, sort of pointing towards the direction you want to tighten it, and you start it. And then you're hitting it kind of backwards, and it tightens it up really good. So a little trick for tightening your wire: you take your staple, you come down to where you want it. So I'm going to go right there, and you put it on a bit of an angle so that when you hit it with the hammer, it's sort of pulling it up and back, which keeps your wire really nice and tight. Like so.
All right, so now we're to the next step. The bottom board is still in there to keep us square. Our wire is nailed on 3 sides, and we've just laid the boards on top here for spacing. Those are our side boards for the top and the side of the sides, but that gives us equal distance so that we can then take that bottom piece that we'd already put together, and we're going to sit it on there, and we're going to screw that in, and that'll just keep those legs from sandwiching in and keep the wire from keep the wire tight so that we can then put the back onto this hutch and stand her upright. All right, so next step is done on this side building here. We have screwed our leg down into our top side board. Then we've gone down the leg, screwing the side in, and basically what we've done is put that narrow side to the leg and screwed down into it. And then that gave us our distance. So then we attached the leg again to that bottom platform. And now we're going to work on the other side before we stand this up and finish it all off. All right, so we've removed that bottom brace board that we had in there, and now we're going to flip it upright. And now we have the makings of a rabbit hutch. It actually looks a little bit more like a hutch now.
We're going to put
So
this section in next.
Yeah.
Screw this top board to the front.
And then we'll put in that second side piece is going to come in over here. And then get the back piece on. All right, so we have stapled down the bottom of that wire. We've put in our center front beam. And we have screwed in the other sides.
Ends up being a lot of flipping and squeeze around. I'm basically going to staple that on, and then we've got to wait for the drills to charge. So I flipped it over again, and we're now putting on sort of the feet. This is a treated piece of wood because this is going to be in contact with the ground the whole time. So basically all we're doing is screwing it down in, and then that's that part.
All right, so I've put our bottom in here, just setting on top because it's not quite prepared yet, so that you can see what we've done. So at this point here, we've turned our 2x4s horizontally, and we have laid them in. The back, right over here, the back is a 2x2 because we don't need it to be super wide. The more wide surface wood you have, the more stuff collects on that because obviously it can't fall through. But this works really, really well for these wire racks that are 20 inches wide, which gives us a 2-foot wide hutch in the end.
So the next part's a little finicky, and even though we do all the measurements, it never works out perfectly every time. What we're doing is on this shelf rack that we use for the floor, we're cutting out these 2 pieces here. Basically this chunk is coming out because we're going to leave, this will become the floor, and we want that sitting on top. But we have to cut these 2 out or else it doesn't fit in our floor space.
It makes it jog around the 2x4 so that there is something still supporting the rabbit.
Yes, and what we're using for that is bolt cutters. And 2. And that's that. And the rabbits can't get at this piece because when you'll see when we put it in here, it's pretty protected by the top of the floor. So this is just another spacer for the floor to sit on so it doesn't bend underneath the rabbits. This little gap here is at the front of the floor because the front is better supported than the back. You'll see why in a second, but we have to leave this. It does collect a little bit of material, but it's really not that bad. And what we basically do is take the floor and it sits in there just like that. And there's our floor.
So basically all that's left now is our plywood back and sides and a roof.
Done.
So that's our regular size hutch all finished and done. We even put on the handles. So basically all that's left is plywood. So at this point, we're going to start on the Mega Hutch, which is our big 8-foot long one. We're not going to go through too much of the process with you here on camera because it's basically exactly the same as the smaller version. But again, there will be a list of the, dang it, it's not ingredients.
Materials.
There'll be a list of the materials that you're going to need and cut down below for both sizes. So we're going to get that built and we'll bring it back when it's time to sort out plywood. So as you can see, we're kind of progressing pretty good on this second Mega Hutch. But one thing that is different from the first one is this has 6 legs because it's 8 feet long. And your middle legs are actually 1 2x4 width shorter. So when you see the item list down below, that's why 2 legs are going to be listed at 35.5 while the other ones are 39. But just thought we would put that little tidbit in there. All right, so Mega Hutch is built, ready for its plywood as well. A little bit of fiddling with the floor on this one because of course we're trying to work with 8-foot plywood, so we had to cut parts off. But all in all, you'll figure it out when you try this method and see what works for you. Looking good. Well guys, this is an achievement for us. 2 Rabbit Hutches done in one day, and it's actually a completed project. Well, I guess it wasn't done in one day because we did start it a month ago. But anyways, all done, all together. We did use 3 sheets of plywood. And the one thing I'm going to say is in the sizing that I put down below, we put the end sheets of plywood on first and the back overlaps it, because you want those tight corners so that the rabbits cannot get in there and nibble, because that is the one downfall to wood, is if there's a little knot or a crack or a break that they could potentially get their teeth in. If they're a chewer, they will chew. We've been very fortunate. We've only had 1 rabbit chew a hole through, and we just put another sheet of plywood over top, and it's worked great ever since. All right, so I'm sure what's on everybody's mind is how much it actually costs to make these hutches. And now the one thing I will say is these are hardy hutches. We use them outdoors year-round in the winter, so there's no other building expense really, which is wonderful when it comes to rabbits. But basically, to build these 2 hutches was about $265. Now that does not include that 1x1 wire on the front, because we bought that so many years ago and it was in a big roll, and I don't really know how much it costs. But otherwise, that is accounting for our 22x4s and our 3 sheets of plywood, as well as those wire mesh bottoms. Now, the one thing I will say, those wire mesh bottoms are getting a little hard to come by here in Canada, but we did just look it up and you can get something very similar at Rona. We did get ours at discount at Home Depot when they were discontinuing them.
So, in typical us fashion, the next thing to do is to move these into our garden space behind us and put some rabbits in them. They're getting used right away. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that.
And there we go. I know it's the next day now, but we ran out of daylight. But the 2 new hutches are filled with our 1 litter of Dutch bunnies. We split up our boys and girls. And we moved one of our champagne d'Argents out to our big old one that we just put a new lid on. This isn't our choice of design, but it works great for now. But here you can see we've got a fleet of hutches. This is just one section. We have another batch as well. So with these 2 additions, we are up to 13 hutches, which is awesome considering we have 17 rabbits. So we still need to keep going. But to be honest, that's coming in a future video. We are working on a rabbit maternity barn, and hopefully we will get that achieved before it is time to have this year's litters arrive.